In a previous video, I make the fairly controversial claim that the 1000S was the first ever production retro motorcycle ever built.
According to my cousin Grok, it was in fact the Harley-Davidson XLCR.
Cousin Grok, yeah, that figures. Well, I think we need to do some further investigation into this if we're going to find out a definitive answer to which motorcycle was the first production retro. Before we can judge the retro credentials of any possible challenger, we need to define exactly what a retro is. Retro has Latin origins meaning back. Something that's retro revives a style or fashion from the past, but it's a brand new item. A retro motorcycle is therefore a current model with styling based on an iconic machine from the past. The 1990s 1000S is obviously a direct copy of the original 1970s 750S, so obviously a retro. So let's take a look at the other contenders to the title of first retro. So let's start with Grok's Harley. The XLCR was released in 1977, with CR apparently meaning cafe racer. The Triton, being the benchmark 1960s British cafe racer, sets the styling standard. A Triumph Bonneville engine, shoehorned into a Norton featherbed frame, a huge alloy tank, clip-on bars, short open silencers, a single race seat, and nothing more than a big chrome headlight up front. The flat tracker-esque CR has none of these styling cues. Even its sporty bikini fairing is pure late 1970s, with other contemporary machines sporting a similar fiberglass edition up front. The XLCR is a handsome stripped-down Harley, but it does not conjure up images of the ton-up boys outside the Ace Cafe. So the Harley completely missed the mark as a retro when it was conceived in 1977. It was in fact a contemporary design, very similar in form to a BMW 90S or the Motor Guzzi Le Mans Mark I.
Well, okay, what about Yamaha's SR500 then?
Ah, that is a good shout. The SR500 appeared in 1978 and ran until 1999. It was basically a street version of the legendary XT500, its simple appearance having US custom overtones, which was a popular look in the late 1970s. Adverts at the time made reference to its thumper characteristics and likened it to earlier British singles, yet it was much easier to live with. Compared to their own ultramodern XJ650 Turbo of 1982, the SR was certainly old-fashioned in appearance, but did that make it a retro? A correlation between the SR and a Max Norton is almost impossible to discern. Nostalgia was evident in the advertising blurb, but the SR was merely an entry-level US-styled street bike. A more convincing pretender to the title of first retro is Honda's XBR 500. Introduced before the 1000S in 1985, it was a nicely styled single-cylinder roadster. The marketing men played on the traditional values inherent in the single-piston design. Again, parallels were drawn with older British singles of yesteryear. In reality, the Honda was thoroughly modern, with nothing stylistically recognisable from the past. This all changed in 1989 when a revamped version, the GB500 TT, hit the showrooms of Japan. It was never officially released into the UK market, but the Great Britain 500 Tourist Trophy was a stylish homage to those stunning race bikes of the 1950s. So the 1000S and Honda GB500 TT are basically neck and neck, certainly on year of manufacture.
There is
anyway.
in fact an earlier retro bike, the Matchless G80 from 1987.
That could indeed be the one. Unlike the SR500 or GB500 that were notionally related to Brit singles, the Matchless G80 was intended to be a recreation of an actual model. The original G80 had been thumping along UK highways for decades in various guises. When his beloved Bonneville became a victim of noise and emission regulations, Les Harris decided to relaunch the Matchless brand instead. Designed by Brian Jones, the all-new machine landed in 1987. Although a bit clumpy in appearance, it successfully disguised some of its modernity. However, the Rotax power plant was a bit of a giveaway. Although retro in concept, the Harris Matchless simply failed to deliver. Without the winged tank emblem, it's just another Rotax-powered amalgamation of parts. with nothing stylistically reminiscent of a 1950s G80.
There is, of course, another Harley-Davidson to take into consideration.
What, another Harley?
Yes, the 1981 FLH Heritage.
OK, we better take a look then. It was during troubled times at Harley-Davidson that the FLH was born in 1981. The combination of a management buyout and increasing competition from both Europe and Japan saw the need for modernisation whilst keeping faith with die-hard enthusiasts. The new Heritage model filled this transition by using up old tech and adding a sense of nostalgia with its styling and model denomination. This realisation that past history could be engineered into new models might have begun at Milwaukee. BMW were quick to catch on by launching the R100 CS in 1983, CS being classic sport. Both the FLH and CS were basically farewell models. By the mid-1980s, the long-serving shovelhead and airhead faced the axe in favour of superior models. Marketing them as either heritage or classic was a clever tactic to shift those final units. In comparison with the current retro ethos being to intentionally resurrect an iconic model, these modern retros engage in an emotional connection with their accurate aesthetics and familiar riding experience. When unveiled in 1989, the 1000S looked sensational. Its incredibly accurate 750S styling merged seamlessly with the Le Mans Mark V underpinnings, and the ride was pure classic Italian. Moto Guzzi's 1000S was the brainchild of the German importer, not the Mandello factory. However, Guzzi performed a magic trick in transforming the swoopy flagship Le Mans into a 750S clone. It's the accuracy and attention to detail that sets the 1000S above earlier attempts at playing the nostalgia card. It could well have been Harley-Davidson that set the retro ball rolling, but it was in fact Moto Guzzi that built the first retro motorcycle.
Grok still insists that it was in fact the Harley-Davidson XLCR.
Well, Grok can go